If you're on bladder medication and your doctor has suggested one, I want you to watch this video before you take another pill. I don't mean to scare you, but there's something you were not told at that appointment, and you deserve to know this. Now, I know you went in with an urgency, the frequency, that constant exhausting feeling when you cannot go away from the bathroom for more than 20 minutes. Your doctor listened, he nodded, handed your prescription. Maybe it was oxybutynin, maybe it was Vesicare, maybe it was Myrbetriq or Gemtesa. And because the doctor said it, you took it. You didn't ask a question. You just wanted a relief. You wanted your life back. And I get it. I have been treating women with bladder issues for over 20 years. I have worked with thousands of them. Week after week, I sit with these women who've been taking these medications maybe for months, weeks, even decades, years, and none of them were told what I'm about to tell you now. So I've read the research. All of it is published. All of it is sitting right in front of every doctor that has prescribed you these meds. And what I found changed the entire way I see this situation. I'm going to walk you through what these medications are doing to your body, what happens when you take them for years, and why the women getting them are usually the ones that were never meant for. Number one, the medication that treats your bladder are also acting on your brain. Now let's get into it. Your urologist prescribed a bladder medication because your bladder was a problem. The medication targeted the bladder. It quiets the spasms, the urgency, and the rest of your body is left alone. This is a story what most women are told. And it makes sense on the surface. You have a bladder problem, you take the bladder meds. Now your urologist is not trying to mislead you. They were trained in a system that looks at the bladder and treats the bladder. The class of medication most commonly prescribed for urgency, overactive bladder, they're called anticholinergic meds. And they've been around for decades. Now that's standard care. Nobody's pausing to ask whether they're the right standard or not. And here's what's wrong with anticholinergic drugs. What anticholinergic actually means in plain English is a drug that is blocking acetylcholine. Acetylcholine, it's a chemical messenger your body uses for a lot of other things besides bladder. It helps your bladder calm down. It also helps your brain function. When you take a drug that blocks acetylcholine to quiet the bladder, that is the same drug crossing the blood-brain barrier, blocking the same messages that your brain's supposed to receive. It's not like you take these drugs and it goes straight to your bladder. It's going to the rest of your body. And most importantly, it is getting to your brain. And here's what's making this more serious than your doctor told you. Now, the research on the long-term use of these drugs is very clear, and it is alarming. It's documented 60% increased risk of cognitive decline and dementia. 60%. And this number is not from a fringe study. It appears in peer-reviewed research, including large study publications like Journal of American Medical Association Internal Medicine that took over 280,000 patients. The risk is real. It is documented, it's being ignored in the appointment where your meds are handed out to you. Now let's think about what that appointment actually looks like. You go into the office, maybe you spend about 12 minutes with your doctor, maybe 15, you're lucky. You describe your symptoms and the doctor is typing, the prescription's printed, and it's handed out to you. The conversation about the drugs or what it does to the brain, it doesn't happen. They don't have the time because it's uncomfortable and because those medications are protocol. And you sitting on the other side, you're saying yes because the doctor said it, and because you're exhausted, and because nobody offered you any other options, and you just don't know any better. When you understand that these medications are acting on your brain and not just the bladder, you stop asking, will this work? And you start asking, what am I actually agreeing to? That is the question that belongs in that appointment. And the question that gets even sharper when you look at these medications, what are these medications actually help and how well they're actually working? Number two, these medications work for fewer women than you were led to believe. And I know you think if the doctor prescribed it, it works. That is a reasonable assumption. A prescription feels like a proof your doctor wrote it, or it must be the solution to your problem. Nobody tells you the efficacy numbers. Doctors do not typically sit down and say, hey, this medication has about 10 to 20% response rate in women with your symptoms. They prescribed it because it is available, because it's covered by the insurance, and because the system they work in, something's better than giving you nothing. The published efficacy data for the anticholinergic drugs for bladder medication in the women with either IC or chronic bladder urgency or frequency shows a response rate up to 10 to 20%. What this means is that about 80 to 90% women that are taking these meds are not really getting any relief, but they're getting the side effects, which includes dry mouth, constipation, blurred vision, brain fog, and all of that without the benefits. It doesn't make sense. And the 10 and 20% that actually got the relief, they only feel it as long as they keep taking the meds. So when they stop taking the meds, the symptoms are back where they started because it actually didn't fix anything. Now you are being asked to trade off your cognitive function for 10 to 20% chance of relief. And that relief only lasts as long as you take the meds. When you stop it, the relief's gone. But here's another part that does not add up. If the medication works for 1 in 5 women the best, and it only works while you keep taking it, this is not a treatment. This is simply the management. And when you add 60% increased risk of cognitive decline to a management level outcome, the math simply doesn't add up and it doesn't make sense. Now, this calculation only works if there's no other option. And that belief is exactly what I want to address. Now, I went through my own bladder journey. I was on bladder installations 3 times a week like a clockwork. They would numb everything for a few hours and I would pee it all out and I'd be right back to where I started after they're done. And I kept doing it and I kept doing it because I did not know any other way. And that's the most expensive part of staying in this system. Not the copay, the belief that this is the ceiling. Once you understand that these medications are just managing, not really solving, you stop waiting for a pill to fix a system problem. And that shifted what makes it possible to actually get better. So the medication were not going to be the answer, then what is actually driving your urgency? Because it's almost certainly not what you were told. If this is landing for you and you want to understand how the whole system that drives the bladder urgency actually work, I have a video in this channel that breaks it down from the beginning. It's linked in the description below, and that is the foundation of all this. Go watch that, and all of this will make sense for you. Number 3, the 3 questions that tell you if you are in a wrong treatment loop. You have probably already tried more than one thing. Maybe it's pelvic floor physical therapy. Maybe it's your 4th, 5th, or 6th medication. Maybe it's a procedure. Or you keep going back because you keep hoping that the next thing is finally the thing for you. And then it doesn't work the way you hoped for. And now you're frustrated and the frustration gets heavier and you start to fear that maybe this is just how your life is now. You keep going from one treatment to the next and nothing really sticks. And here's how you know if you're actually stuck in a loop. It's not your diagnosis. It's that every time the release shows up and then it's gone the second you stop the treatment. I want you to ask these 3 questions to yourself. Number 1, when you stop a treatment, whether it's a medication, a procedure, a pelvic floor therapy, do your symptoms come back within a few days or a week? Number 2, has your provider ever asked you about your nervous system, about your bowel patterns, about your stress history in a context to your bladder symptoms? Number 3, do your flares seems to connect it to traveling, stress, difficult weeks, emotional situations, even when your diet has not changed much? If your answer is yes to the first question and no to the second question, you are in a treatment loop. And this is not because you did something wrong, because you've been working with providers who are looking at the bladder and not the entire system behind it. Bladder is not the problem. Bladder is simply the messenger. No medication, no matter how long you take it, it is not going to resolve the messaging problem by just silencing the messenger. So what does it actually mean to address the system instead of just the symptoms? And that is what I want to show you. The shift that has to happen before anything can actually change. You have to stop treating bladder and start looking at what this bladder is actually responding to. And that one shift, that tiny shift, it's what separates every woman that I have seen that get better from the women that just stay stuck. Let's understand this very clearly. The longer you stay in a symptom management part, the more the underlying pattern would solidify. Your nervous system has been trained around the urgency for months or years. Your brain has practiced the alarm loop thousands of times. But that doesn't mean it cannot change. It can, but the window where the change is easiest is getting smaller. Every month spent managing symptoms with the medication that is not working is a month that the pattern becomes more ingrained and the cognitive risk increases. I had a patient once who resisted bladder Botox as a procedure for the longest time because she didn't feel right with it. Her doctor pushed it, and now she's been dealing with this for almost 30 years with bladder urgency, and she was exhausted. So eventually she gave up and she got Botox. And what happened after Botox is something I think about every time I sit with a woman who's being pushed towards a procedure. Her nerves were shot. She went from constant urgency and constant running to the bathroom to a complete inability to empty her bladder on her own. She would have to carry a catheter in her purse so that she could use a bathroom every time she has to. And you know, the worst part of this was she still felt that intense urgency. That never went away. But now she couldn't respond to it. Now she found me after all of that happened. We were able to help her some with the discomfort, but the bladder muscle function never fully returned. And you know what the first thing she told me after our first session together is that, Dr. Sonal, I wish I had met you before I had that procedure. That was heartbreaking. So what I'm trying to say from this is stop evaluating treatments based on what the short-term relief you're going to get and whether they stop the symptom in the moment or not. This is not healing. This is just managing your symptoms. Start asking this question whether any of the treatment that you're considering, is it addressing the nervous system? Is it actually addressing the bladder-brain connection? Is it helping with the gut? Is it actually helping with the pelvic floor overactivity and the connection to the symptoms? If the answer is no, then the answer to those treatments should be no as well. The thing that you could actually start doing about this is not complicated. It's just different from everything else you've been told to try. I want to show you this one test that shows you whether your bladder signal is broken or not. So that will be a good first step for you to look into. Your bladder urgency is not a bladder problem. It is a signaling problem. The brain's getting messages that it says it's full and it's urgent and you gotta go. And when you're responding those messages when they're not even true, when the bladder is not even full. I've been telling you this from the whole video, and now I'm going to prove it to you how this works. Now, I give this first test to my patients. This is the first thing we do together. Today, I'm going to share the same technique of evidence that is going to prove to you that this is a signaling problem. So for this, we're going to need a measuring cup. You're going to need a measuring cup with a lining like this. Keep it in your bathroom. The next time you feel the strongest urge that day to pee, the moment you feel like, oh my gosh, this is so much, and where your body is telling you that you have to go right now, I want you to pee in this cup. Measure how much urine is actually coming out. And I bet you it's going to be a low digit number. Maybe it's 2 ounces, 3 ounces, maybe 4 ounces. Now, let me show you what this actually looks like. This is 20 ounces. This 20 ounces is what your bladder capacity is. This is how much it can hold. So now, just because it can hold 20 ounces, you're not filling up the bladder all the way at the top, okay? So this is 14 ounces. This is how much it looks. This is a plastic cup. So when you're about 12 to 14 ounces, this is a healthy signal. When you empty and this is your output, your body is telling you that it's time to go. So anything in the teen numbers is okay. Now, I want to show you, this is 2 ounces. This is 4 ounces. If I were to fill this cup all the way to the top, that's 20 ounces. That is your actual capacity. This and this is your bladder just screaming that you have to go, but you don't really have to go. Look at the difference. Look at how little is in here. Now, here's the number that matters the most. Your bladder has the capacity of holding 20 ounces. That's an average that a bladder can hold. That doesn't mean you fill up all the way to the top. If you're a small person like me, you're like low on the maybe 18, 19, 20. If you're like a 7-foot big person, maybe yours is like 24, 26 ounces. But the average is 20 ounces. So when your body screams emergency alarm and the cup is only showing you 2 ounces, you are holding the proof in your hand that your bladder has room for 10 times the amount. And your brain sent you running to the bathroom even with that. That is not a full bladder. This is a wrong signal. And a wrong signal does not get fixed by taking a pill to silence it. A wrong signal gets fixed by finding the deeper reason, retraining the system that is sending that signal. And now, before you go ahead and do this 20 times a day, this meant to be done only once. This is not a new habit. This is not something to tackle every day. This is one measurement, one time to show you the truth about what is actually happening between your brain and your bladder. Because once you've seen the number in the cup, you cannot go back believing that the bladder is a problem. And that changes every decision you make from here on. So go do this today. Go get your proof. I'm not telling you to throw away your medications. That is your decision, and your doctor should be a part of this. What I am telling you is that you deserve to make that decision with a full big picture. The 60% risk, the 10 to 20% chances of that even working, the fact that these medications are just management and they're not really healing, you walked into the appointment without that information. And now you have it. And knowing this information changes what questions you're going to ask next to your doctor in your next visit. If you want to understand what is actually driving your bladder urgency from the inside, the next video to watch is the one I made on why the bladder problem is not actually a bladder problem. It covers the bladder-brain connection, the nervous system, the loop, and why chasing symptoms is keeping you stuck. The video is linked in the description. This is at the end of the screen right now. I will see you there.